Hello, my name is Rabbi Abram Goodstein, and I gave this sermon on June 4th. Here we go. In this week's portion, we see a lot of pour-over from last week's portion. It's been over 2 years since the Israelites escaped the land of Egypt, and in those 2 years, they've received the 10 Commandments from Sinai and have begun to identify themselves as Adonai's people. And last week really showed the strained relationship between the Israelites and Adonai. The Israelites complained a lot, and Adonai responded to these complaints with a ton of anger. Unfortunately, in this week's portion, things don't get any better. Believe it or not, the Israelites do not travel to Sinai for 40 years right away. In fact, within what seems like less than a month, they make it to the borders of the land of Canaan. And here, they're poised to enter the land of Canaan, so close they can see it. And the first order of action is to send spies to the land to reconnoiter the area. Instead of sending one person to look things over, they send 12 for each tribe of Israel. Now, while this seems democratic, we're going to see that 12 spies may not have been a good idea. And so these 12 spies enter the land of Canaan and come back safely 40 days later. And it's clear upon their return that they are going to offer the Israelites a mixed report. The spies famously bring grapes and pomegranates and figs back with them, and when they return, they exclaim that the land is indeed bountiful and flows with milk and honey. It is here that the spies are split in their recommendation. On one side, we've got Joshua and Caleb, and they believe it's possible to go and take possession of the land of Canaan. However, on the other side, you have these 10 other spies that decide to greatly embellish the reasons why they should not enter the land of Canaan. And the 10 spies shockingly describe a mythical race of people called the Nephilim as inhabitants of this land. And then they explain how the Nephilim devour settlers, and the Israelites are the size of grasshoppers compared to their stature. I mean, who are these people? And for me, this is a surprising turn of events. The actual narration of their time in Canaan is very short and just describes the places they explored and some of the groups of people that they see. There is not one mention of encountering Nephilim during the narration of their reconnaissance. However, now, as the 10 spies describe their experience back to the Israelites, it's suddenly an important detail. Its inconsistency strikes me as an untrue embellishment, much like how the fish we catch get larger the more times we tell the story of catching them. Yet this fabrication has an immediate and profound effect on the Israelites. Instead of the Israelites agreeing with Caleb and Joshua's estimate, they become incredibly agitated and stricken with flights of hyperbole, wishing that they had all died in Egypt or were stricken dead right on the spot. This unfortunately triggers Adonai in a big way. These 10 spies start a full-blown crisis, and Adonai is ready to wipe the Israelites off the map. However, Moses, encountering the highest stakes field diplomacy of his life, uses a very tactful and logical argument to get Adonai to change Adonai's mind. Moses reminded Adonai that Adonai had spent a lot of time showing the Egyptians Adonai's cosmic power and how far Adonai was willing to go to protect the Israelites. If the Egyptians next hear that the Israelites were destroyed, they will say that it must have been that Adonai was powerless to prevent their destruction. Moses goes on to suggest that this may be a bad public relations move for Adonai. Then in closing, Moses offers this beautiful and really interesting formula that we see in a number of times in the Torah. It goes like this. Moses says, Adonai is slow to anger and abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgressions. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of his people according to your great kindness, as you have forgiven this people ever since Egypt. And this works. Moses reminded Adonai is a kind God and showed that Adonai would look rather silly to the Egyptians for not protecting the Israelites. But it's only really a half victory. Because the crisis that the 10 spies create, it becomes Adonai's rationale for the Israelites to wander the desert for 40 years. So the current adults will not live long enough to see the land of Canaan. This is a fascinating decision to make after just being referred to as a kind God. But I sense there is a kind of kindness in Adonai's choice. Because I imagine Adonai has a bigger picture for the Israelites than just this generation. Adonai needs to guide the Israelites into a resilient and faithful civilization, bound to Adonai, but also successful. And for this to happen, Adonai needs a people resolute and ready to take decisive action when it's needed. Perhaps due to the trauma of their past, the Israelites are just not ready to be the kind of people that Adonai needs them to be successful. And this may be the most difficult part of their relationship. The Israelites see themselves as Adonai's chosen people and thus treasured by Adonai. And they assume this relationship means that Adonai will give them a high standard of living. However, what they are experiencing is something quite different. They are forced into a nomadic lifestyle, and they no longer have access to the advantages of an agricultural lifestyle. This is not the standard of living they anticipated from Adonai. I believe that the Israelites are hurt by this difference of expectation and act out from that pain. And Adonai, on the other hand, sees this generation of the Israelites as a means for the Israelites to become a successful civilization that worships Adonai. And while I believe that Adonai cares for this particular generation, we see from the Tanakh that Adonai has greater plans for the next generation. So this generation ends up becoming a caretaker generation. They have access to all the sustenance they need in the form of manna, and their job is to raise the next generation of Israelites to start the settlement in Canaan in earnest. And this is why I feel that the Israelites and Adonai have a hard time communicating. This particular Israelite generation did not realize they were setting up to be a caretaker generation. And while Adonai has lots of important milestones for the Israelites to reach, those 10 spies showed Adonai that this generation was just not ready. But it also showed us that turning a people into a sacred civilization is such a difficult task. All right, until next time, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.